Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Metro 2033 for PC and Xbox 360. This is a first-person shooter developed by 4A Games and published by THQ. It was released in 2010 to fairly high acclaim, actually. It is one of the few games I know of that is based on a novel, and that novel is Metro 2033, of course. And that was written by, I believe you pronounce it Dmitry Glukhovsky, but if you are a native speaker of Russian, please feel free to correct me on that. Yeah, it was based on that novel, and it received a fair amount of praise when it came out, but the PC version did have problems, most notably performance and bug issues. While they do seem to have fixed most of the performance problems, at least in DirectX 9, it does support DirectX 10, but I haven't really been able to see anything about that apart from on YouTube, because I don't have a computer that can do DirectX 10. But it runs fine in DirectX 9, and I haven't seen any major performance problems anywhere. It does occasionally stutter a bit, but other than that, it's nothing serious. As far as the visuals go, it is very impressive. I was very impressed by that. They did great things with the lighting, really awesome lighting effects that really give you this very atmospheric feel, like you actually are in this extremely dark underground area that's really kind of mystical in some ways, and in other ways it's just this horrible place. So the lighting really does play a lot in that. The textures are pretty high res. Modeling in general is very good as well. There are a few things here and there that aren't so great, like the first person modeling. It seems like they made the guns a little too small. Nothing too big, it's just a size issue, but it does seem a little odd, especially when you aim down the sights and the sights become absolutely gigantic. So that's a little odd, and they also have a few little glitches here and there with the graphics. You'll occasionally notice some things pop in or out. Sometimes you'll have some really weird glitches where all sorts of textures will mess up and such like that. Those seem to be few and far between until you get to later stages of the game, though. And in addition, they did a great job with the animations. The smoothness of the animations is pretty impressive. That said, I don't like the third-person animations' sluggishness. They do seem a little slow to react to things, and they really aren't in the context of the whole thing. But they just look a little odd, and it's just a little off-putting at first, but you get used to it eventually. Then you have the sound design, which is kind of all over the place. On the one hand, you have sound effects that do their job, and that's kind of it. They're really not that impressive. Some of the gun sounds are really nice, are really nice. Some of the environmental sounds are really impressive too. But for the most part, the sound effects kind of just do their job. They really didn't put a lot of great effort into them. Voice acting, I listen to it mostly in Russian because the English voice acting is pretty bad. They just don't get it right, and it just feels out of place because the game is set in Moscow, and they wouldn't be speaking English in Moscow. But you can set it to Russian with English subtitles, and that's what I did. And the English voices are pretty bad, but the Russian voices are just kind of average. They do seem a little disinterested sometimes, and that just kind of bothered me a little bit. But it's nothing too serious. For the most part, they do their job pretty well. Then you have the music, which is kind of just non-existent, really. It's there, but you really never notice it. It's just kind of one of those things where they really downplayed the music in favor of the other stuff. And in some places that works pretty well. In other places it's just kind of there and you notice it and it's like, why is this here? So it's kind of all over the place in terms of the music, but overall sound design and visuals are pretty well done. Now, what really matter here are the story and the gameplay. Now, the story takes place in post-apocalyptic Moscow, where the survivors have fled into the Metro, which is, of course, the subway system, in case you don't know what that is. And they're trying to eke out this meager living there. The conditions are pretty awful. There's lots of bandits and factions fighting each other over ideologies and for survival. So it does a pretty good job with portraying that, and it's pretty impressive to see that they actually tried to include as much of the actual things that were in Metro 2033 as possible in terms of like the universe. I mean, I don't know how well it follows the book. I haven't read the book, but they seem to really revel in the lore of Metro 2033's factions and such. I believe they work very closely with the author himself on this, so that would make sense. But you play as Artyom, who is about a 20-year-old survivor living in the Metro, and all of a sudden he ends up getting embroiled in this thing where the Dark Ones are coming, and he has to deliver a message to what is supposed to be the biggest station in the Metro, which is Polis. And he has to deliver this message by going through all these tunnels to get there, which it's very hard to get there. So that's just been most of the game doing. You go through all these tunnels, going through the different factions, meeting different people, finding out how life in the Metro kind of is. And that's where the problems begin, because this game has really awful characters. There is not a single person in this game that is memorable, to be honest with you. I really didn't notice anybody that was memorable. In fact, I forgot who people were immediately after meeting them, just because they were just so generic. They were so pointless to the game most of the time. They were just kind of there to progress the story forward, and you really didn't notice them otherwise. The only one I did remember was the guy who leads you through the creepy tunnel of creepiness. I'll talk about that in a minute. But that was only because that was such a memorable part of the game, rather than actually him being a memorable character. So overall, the storyline itself is not bad. It does progress decently. There's a lot of filler in it, though. They really threw in a lot of levels that feel very fillery. And it's a fairly short game, too, so that doesn't help. So the pacing is a little off, and it just feels like it's so full of filler. The storyline itself is not that bad, and the ending's kind of a letdown, though. And of course, the characters are pretty awful. So where you go to is the gameplay. Now, this is a single-player only game. There's no multiplayer at all. And they really kind of reveled in the fact that they tried to make it as brutally difficult as possible. At least that's the impression I got, because it ended up being like that. For one, you have ammo conservation to worry about. Ammo in the Metro is fairly scarce, so you have to really place your shots well and worry about whether you're hitting your enemies or not. And you also have to be very careful not to waste your ammunition, because if you do, you're going to run out of it, and you're going to end up dead, because that's just the way this game rolls. You do get military-grade ammunition as well. You have basically two types of ammo, which is military-grade and dirty ammo. Dirty ammo is what they make in the Metro. That is the cheap ammo to find. You can basically just find it on people as you go along. And that's the majority of your ammo stockpiles. You also get military-grade ammo, which is only for 5.45mm weapons like the AK-74. And it does more damage, but it's also your currency, so you don't want to use it as your actual ammunition. You got to be really careful about that. And when you go to certain stations, you can actually buy new equipment. Like, say you want to go and buy some more filters for your gas mask, which is you actually have to wear your gas mask if you're going to the surface or through an area that's full of radiation or poison gas. And you actually have to get more filters for your gas mask in order to actually be able to use it. They degrade over time. So if you want to, say, get more filters for your gas mask, or more ammunition, or a new weapon or something like that, you can go to these different stations and buy them with your military-grade ammunition. And so that's kind of handy. And it's kind of a cool thing to do, because they actually have upgraded versions of different weapons. Like the revolver can get constantly upgraded throughout the game, and that's pretty impressive. And some of the weapons are pretty interesting. I mean, it's cool to see what people have improvised in the Metro. That said, it really doesn't feel powerful at all. The pistol feels like the most powerful weapon in the whole game, to be honest with you, and that's pretty sad. If you get headshots with the pistol, it's basically unstoppable, whereas like the AK-74, for instance, does barely any damage, it seems. And the shotguns, the faster rate of fire they get, the less damage they do. So it's like, why am I even bothering? So your weapons do feel kind of underpowered, and the gunplay itself just isn't that impressive. It's kind of fairly standard first-person shooter stuff. And What is interesting is you do get throwing knives, and you can actually throw them at your enemies, and if they hit them in the head and they're wearing a helmet, it will bounce off of the helmet. So stuff like that is kind of cool, but at the same time, it's ungodly irritating. And that is the main problem I had with this game. It feels like it's designed solely to piss the player off, and it certainly succeeded with me. I despised playing this game towards the middle to the end of it, because the difficulty got so inconsistent. They advertise their stealth mechanics, and it's like, oh, you can sneak through past your enemies. No, you can't. You can try all you want, but you're going to get discovered constantly. And that's because you may think you're in total darkness, but oh, nope, you're not. You need to check your watch to see if your darkness light is green. If it's green, then you're good. And so you end up having a lot of complete BS moments from the ridiculous AI. I actually played through this, trying to play through it on normal. I had to lower the difficulty about halfway through the game because it just got so brutally difficult because the stealth mechanics were so broken. And they seem to troll you too, because it's like, oh, you need to sneak through this area. Well, why am I sneaking through an area where there are these narrow platforms over an abyss that I need to cross over in order to get to where I'm going? When, in fact, when you get to the end of this whole segment, when you're trying to sneak through this whole area, they finally give you night vision goggles. It's like, really? Really, game? And that's kind of how it is throughout the whole game. It's just it kind of trolls you throughout, and it just bothered me. There were certain segments of the game where they were really cool, like the tunnel where you had to go through, and there's all the shades of people throughout, and that thing. It was really cool. There were some moments there where it was legitimately creepy. It was a little unsettling, though. That was the thing. It went to unsettling, but it never legitimately tried to scare you or totally creep you out or anything. And that's kind of another thing too. They kind of wasted the atmosphere. So overall, I didn't really have that much fun with Metro. The storyline itself is not bad. The visuals and everything are really nice. But the level design is so awful. There's some levels that were really just trolling you, like the war zone, for instance. That if you know what I'm talking about, then you probably understand. Some of the enemies seemed either really overpowered or really underpowered. It was kind of all over the place. Difficulty is really inconsistent. They also threw in a lot of segments where you're on a rail car, and that really speaks to filler. And there's so many of those in this game. It feels really just full of filler, full of stuff that's really unnecessary. So overall, I didn't have much fun with Metro 2033 at all. It is impressive in the atmosphere and the visuals, but that's kind of it. I give it a 2 out of 5. Thanks for watching.